Welcome to the show. It's Tuesday. Glad to have you with us. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. How are you tonight, Jesse?
I'd be good, but again, we talked about this before the show. I feel like my face is just on full display right now.
Your face is on full display. Jesse feels like the camera is zoomed in on him more than usual. And obviously, if you look
recently,
if you look at my shot and you look at his shot, his mug is definitely filling up the majority of his screen. Whereas, you've got all of this on my side here, whether that's good or bad or whatever else. Maybe if you just wore a hat, like Nick is saying, maybe things would just work out better for you. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Facilitate says it looks normal.
They're not paying attention. They're not paying attention.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe just look at it that way. No one's ever really paid attention, right? Well, it is a big day in our nation's history, of course. It's a big day, an historic day. We're all going to be on pins and needles tonight until we see the results released for the first ever 12-team college football playoff rankings. That is coming out tonight. Are you excited for that, Jesse? Or are you like on the edge of your seat? Where are you on the playoff rankings coming out tonight?
So I feel like I'm going to be a bit of a curmudgeon today.
Okay.
Just given the disclaimer, I don't like beginning of season AP polls. I don't like first committee polls. There's still a lot to be played, right?
I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone in that.
Well, it's a
first ones have to come out at some point, though, right? Like at some point, the first ones have to drop every season.
Yeah, and I get that, and it gives people something to kind of talk about, something to chew on. But ultimately, what happens is it just starts a lot of arguments when there's still 3 games left in the season, right? Like I like the indicator or kind of the checkpoint of where your team is at, and if the season ended today, so you can understand the criteria that you're being judged upon. But I know that IU is going to come out ahead of Notre Dame in these rankings, or potentially right behind, and it's going to cause a lot of controversy, right? But the thing is, IU still has Michigan, IU still has Ohio State. Like there's still a lot of schedule left for a lot of teams, and there's so many things that can happen. I just hate getting caught up on so many what ifs based off this first kind of ranking. I like to sit down and chew on it when we're like a ranking away or the final ranking. Like that's what I'm more interested in. But it just, again, it's nice to know where you're at, but then at the same time, it's just going to cause so many what ifs and so many arguments about, well, this scenario and that scenario. And it's like, all right, well, why don't we just let the scenarios play out before we start determining, what we think is going to happen?
Yes, there are a lot of scenarios that can take place within the next few weeks, and we'll see how close to. I mean, look, we had an upset this weekend that we weren't expecting, right? I mean, Iowa State finally lost. Kansas State lost to Houston. We had a couple of upsets in the Big 12.
SMU destroyed Pitt.
Yeah, SMU well, that wasn't an upset, but my point is, some of these things are starting to take care of themselves, which typically does happen every year. But this year is so unlike any other year for 2 different reasons. The expanded conferences, which we've talked about, and the fact that because the conferences are so expanded, not everyone's playing each other. So things don't necessarily, they won't take care of themselves the way they typically take care of themselves, right? So like that's part of this. And of course, the biggest difference is we have a 12-team playoff and not a 14 playoff like we're used to. And the first 12-team college football playoff rankings do come out tonight, 7:00, as a matter of fact, or when they'll be released. I had some lime with my fish tacos tonight. I had a little fish taco action, some lime, and my mouth is a little puckered up. So for some reason, I'm having a little bit harder time actually getting, like my tongue feels like it's the size of your head, basically. Marcus Freeman, though, talked a little bit about handling the release of the first playoff rankings with his team.
Yeah, they're going to look, and I'm sure somebody will tell me we're ranked, and I'll continue to remind them that it's great, but that has no impact on our future, right? Like we got to make sure right now we take care of what's important, because if we think that the rankings of tomorrow are going to be what the rankings are at the end of the season, and then we're crazy. We got to take care of what we have right in front of us, and that's this opportunity to prepare for Florida State.
I mean, you can't hide from it. Everyone's going to be talking about it, probably watching it tonight. We will save our predictions for the front end of rapid fire here in a little bit, but just in terms of like the rankings coming out tonight, I mean, I think any coach would be foolish to think that you can hide those from your team. And I mean, like I did find it interesting that Marcus Freeman was like, well, somebody will probably tell me. I mean, is Marcus Freeman really not going to find out himself? Is he really going to try to shield himself from the rankings release tonight?
I think he will to the best of his ability, but unfortunately for Marcus Freeman and every other coach in the business, social media exists, and no matter how much you want to hide,
TV exists.
Yeah, TVs, social media, cell phones, all of it.
You are aware that there's of this invention called TV, and on this invention they show shows, right?
Right, and so it's. I mean, it naturally is going to happen. But like Marcus Freeman said, and kind of what I was alluding to a little bit as well, is they're just rankings, right? Like you just get an idea for how you're being perceived. All you can do is kind of go out there and handle your business week after week. And that's got to be Notre Dame. Like they can't care about these rankings at all, because if they finish out this season 4-0, things will take care of itself and they'll end up, in a playoff matchup.
But in the meantime, as Connor says, if you join IB's premium message board, the New Champions Lounge, there is a great thread where you can post your top 12 predictions for tonight's rankings. And of course, if you're listening on a podcast on Wednesday morning, I hope that you got through everything that Tuesday was unscathed. And, by now, Wednesday morning, you would know where Notre Dame came out in the rankings. My question is over under 15 minutes before they actually release any actual rankings on ESPN's show, because,
oh, that's an over for sure.
It's got to be, right? They're going to get to at least the first commercial break, and then they're going to come back, and then they're going to do the release of some rankings. I'll be curious to see how long they drag it out for and look, to your point about, oh, you wish they would wait and all that different stuff. It's a TV show. That's what it is. It's a TV show, and that's why it's on Tuesday night. Same night as, something else of presumed importance that's going on in our country here tonight. Not to mention NFL trade deadline. So all that's going on.
When we go to this next audio clip, I want you to notice when we move off to the left of the screen here, how much more zoomed out I am.
Okay. All right.
It's like the normal view. Your view doesn't change regardless, but when we go to audio again, I'm going to go back to the normal zoomed out, and I'm going to look like a normal person, just not a floating head.
Did I not say trade deadline? Like, did I don't know, USMA 87 was, what exactly did I say? Did I say something?
You said trade deadline.
My tongue. Okay. I do want to tell you about my bookie, the one sports book that's got your back. It's no fluff, no second guessing, just straight up action with you in total control. At my bookie, it's never been about guessing. It's about giving you the edge so that every bet that you place comes with confidence and a plan. If you know football and you love to win, then my bookie was made for you. And if you're new to the game, not sure where to start, step one is use our promo code, IRISH, and that'll double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right from the jump. It's more money, more power to make more winning plays. Again, that promo code is IRISH. So you can bet anything, anytime, from anywhere with MyBookie, the sports book that gives you total control and rewards for every moment of play. So now I'm going to have to watch as I play this next clip from Marcus Freeman and see exactly what your head looks like as it gets shoved off to the side. All right, so here we go. Different kind of challenge this week compared to the Navy game. Navy, of course, was undefeated, commanded Notre Dame's attention. Florida State, we thought it was going to be one thing at the start of the season, but they come into this game with a 1-8 record.
I think about for them, I'm sure it's pretty tough being a head coach and knowing you have a lot of that talent, but the outcome hasn't been what you want it to be. You just put your head down and find ways to help your team improve. For us, it's again, it's one of 12 guaranteed opportunities. You're playing Florida State at home in a night game, and what a great opportunity. You have to respect that opportunity by the way you prepare. And that's what I'm continuing to preach, is that our preparation physically and mentally has to be better than what it was in the past. Because if you do the same thing, the natural gravitational pull is going to make you worse. And that's what I told the guys last week, is that if we think we do the same thing this bye week that we did last bye week and we think we're going to get better, that's not how God created this earth. There's a natural gravitational pull. If you do the same thing, you're going to get worse. So we have to elevate. We have to elevate in the way our preparation is this week than it was in the weeks before. And we pushed them hard. But there's got to be another step for this program.
Got to be another step for the program. By the way, your head does not look any different in the little side shot compared to what it looks
You guys
like
are crazy. Right, you can see the logo on my shirt on that one. Now you can't. It's zoomed in.
Get over it. Get over it. This is kind of a litmus test, really, isn't it, for what they've truly learned since the Northern Illinois loss, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of that first true challenge, I feel like, since NIU, where you were, outside of Purdue, where you were the heavy favorite, and you now have to go in and take care of business. And, I appreciate Marcus Freeman kind of, giving the spiel about Florida State still being a good team and still having a ton of talent on the roster and, having some challenges at quarterback and, basically Norvell's ability to kind of come out and it's not the same game plan every week. Florida State's going to come out and try new things and try to get innovative with what they have on the roster, and Notre Dame has to do everything that they can to be prepared for that. And I'm pretty sure in Marcus Freeman's press conference, he said that, in talking with Al Golden, he was like, listen, this team, when you put on the tape, they're not doing the same thing every week, right? And so to me, that shows innovation on Norvell's level of, listen, we're not going to do this insanity thing and keep
He's still trying.
We're not going to try the same things over and over again. So if I'm Notre Dame, you have to be expecting kind of the unexpected, the trick plays, the misdirection, the stuff that hasn't been shown on tape, and just really stay disciplined, right? And not get in a hole early. Yeah, that's kind of I feel like the thing that really hurts, teams in these situations. You can't get in a hole early and feel like you're playing catch up or chasing the entire game. It's just not, doesn't usually provide a recipe for success. But, again, at the end of the day, it's hard not to recognize where Florida State is right now and trying not to play down to their level. And I think Marcus Freeman did a good job of kind of reinforcing, even despite what Florida State's record is, we still have things we need to work on to get to our end goals by the end of the season. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah, exactly. There's still a lot of talent on this team, and you can't look past that. And kind of where there's always been, even in like pre-Mike Norvell, there's been talent on these Florida State rosters. They put it all together last year. They go 13-0, of course. No one could have seen this coming, even with as much turnover as they had, and what you had to go to the transfer portal to get. Because, look, you can say, well, of course they're not very good, regardless of how much talent they had. Look at what they had to do to go to the transfer portal. They had to bring all these guys in from the portal. You can't win like that. Well, I don't think you could tell Curt Cignetti that down in Indiana, because he had to go and get like 20 plus guys from the transfer portal as well. And he's winning with, a MAC quarterback and a bunch of guys that he brought with him from James Madison as well, So I don't know. I think you at the very least have to be very conscious that they're going to probably try to hit you with some haymakers early and see what you can withstand, going to what you were talking about with the fact that they have tried some different things. To me, it just comes down to how focused, how locked in are you as a team if you're Notre Dame, because you have had 2 bye weeks in the last 5 weeks now. You got 3 games, 2 bye weeks. How locked in can you be coming out of this second bye week as you head into now the last 1/3 of the season? DJ with a reminder to hit that like button. Appreciate you throwing that in there, DJ. And DJ also, of course, Notre Dame women's basketball last night, and we'll hit some of that. Olivia Miles and her triple-double and some other Notre Dame women's basketball stuff in rapid fire. And I saw DJ, there were a couple comments that he had in one of the threads from one of the stories that I put up. So there's some specific DJ stuff coming up. And I know, Decaf had some women's basketball comments as well. A lot of injuries, obviously, and we'll touch on that in rapid fire.
That lime is tearing you up right now.
Can you tell?
Yeah. It's like you got some reflux going on too.
So it's not reflux. It's almost like a hiccup. I don't know what it is.
You might have, so like sometimes when I eat like pineapple or like avocado, you get kind of not an allergic reaction, but kind of like your throat like swells up a little bit. I feel like that's what's going on with you right now. That itchiness and kind of that swell up.
Matt wants to know if Vince's bets are up to 25 cents now. That's actually.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of, I got absolutely hosed last night on my Monday night bet. I was 2 yards away from $350, but it's like, that's like the worst thing possible is you stay up late for these Monday night games. You're following your bet, and everything's hitting. And then you fall short by 2 measly receiving yards. You're like, well, not only have I wasted my time, I'm going to suffer at work tomorrow, and now I'm upset that my bet lost.
I feel you. It's been a while.
I did get a free lunch today, though, so I can't be overly mad today.
All right. Yeah, to the questions about Uiagalelei, he is out. He will not be playing in this game. Oh, and now we've got Norvell is no Signetti, because he's had one bad year. Now Signetti, Google him. He does win. Jay Lamont says IU coach Signetti, of course, brought his players with him like Dion Norvell treats the portal. Like
Have you?
Again, these are group of 5 players that he's winning with in the Big Ten. Now, how many actual good to great wins has he had so far this year?
They played one team with the winning record.
That's exactly right. But at the same time, these are group of 5 players that he infused his team with. Now, some of them, the guys that did come over with him from James Madison, had the culture and all that stuff. But again, it's like he went out and he got a veteran quarterback from the MAC. That's what he's winning in the Big Ten with a lot of group of 5 players, whether they came with him from James Madison or not.
Have you seen the recirculating video of Signetti's Big Ten press conference at the beginning of the season? Is
that the Google me thing or?
Yeah, well, they were predicted to finish last in the Big Ten, and he was like, he was basically like, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but Google me. I've won everywhere I've gone, and we're certainly not going to finish last in the Big Ten this season.
It's a bold statement if you've never coached a game at Indiana to be saying it, but look at the track record. Is Indiana the new power? Like, how long does Signetti stay at Indiana?
Can you pull up that most recent comment there by Jeremy in terms of Indiana? I keep hearing this.
Jeremy has spoken. It isn't who they have played, it is how they have won. Okay.
I can't get on board with it.
But couldn't you say that about Navy as well before they played Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Navy was pretty much trouncing just about everybody.
They weren't turning the ball over. They were beating everyone by like 21 plus. Like no one could stop them. Listen, here's the biggest argument I see between, and this will all take care of itself again by the end of the season. If IU goes undefeated, I'll be the biggest IU fan in the entire country, right? You've deserved your right. You beat Ohio State. You're going to the Big Ten championship. The counter argument for me is yes, IU doesn't have a loss like Notre Dame does, but IU doesn't have a win like Notre Dame does. Like Notre Dame has a win over a really good SEC school. They have a win over Louisville, who just beat a top 10 Clemson team, right? Like they have a win over Navy. It's just, I have a hard time buying into, well, they're beating the crap out of everyone. Okay. Well, they beat Charlotte, Western Illinois.
But they're also still Indiana. They're not even a program that's used to going 500 in the Big Ten, let alone being 9-0, So I get what you're saying, but I'm not going to completely knock them because of that, simply because of the fact that this is not a school that has come close to being even, again, it's not even a team that goes to like even minor bowl games on a semi-regular basis. They're what Purdue is right now most of the time, So I'm not going to knock them for the way that they've won, or not the way that they've won, but for who they've beaten, because you don't win on the football field at Indiana, and they are dominating people this year. So I'll give them credit, but at the same time, look, Ohio State's coming up here in a couple weeks. We're going to find out a lot about.
Yeah, and so I've been accused by some friends and even some people in the chat right now of being an IU hater, and that's completely fine with me. But I just don't. The standard is always for Notre Dame to prove themselves. Notre Dame has to prove it. But what has IU proven? And again, it's going to take care of itself. But to me personally, IU hasn't proven anything yet. You can beat bad teams and you can win by 21 plus. That's all fine and dandy, but like I want to see you stack up against a team like Ohio State, and it's coming. And the way
this season's shaping up, you could see Notre Dame and Indiana possibly in a 7-10 or a 8-9.
See, that would be worst case scenario to me, seeing IU and Notre Dame play, because that takes the home field advantage out of what Notre Dame gets in the playoffs of a team coming to Indiana, a team coming to South Bend.
There'd be a lot of red in Notre Dame Stadium.
It would be basically a neutral matchup, and the weather is no longer a factor because IU lives in the same state. So I don't want to see that matchup.
It's a little warmer, 3.5 hours or so down south. It's at least a little warmer down there, especially in the middle of winter. It's not what it is up here. But I get your point. When is that? Is it 2 weeks away, that Indiana-Ohio State game?
Yes, I think IU is on a bye this week, and then they go into – no, I think they might play Michigan first, then Ohio State, and then end the season with Purdue.
That sounds right. Let me see. Yeah. So they've got Michigan this week, then they've got a bye, then Ohio State, then Purdue. Yeah. So Ohio State plays Indiana the week before they play Michigan. So that'll be interesting. Back to back. DK says you're just grumpy since you got engaged. Have you been getting marital advice from Vince?
No, I just have no money anymore.
Except for the money that you're throwing around on sports bets to try to make money for your wedding correct. Next year.
I am doubling down with
How's that going, by the way? How far above the line are you right now?
About 2,500.
And what's the peak that you had been at?
Probably, well, we won't talk about that.
So the original plan was to get off the sports apps until you made that one big bet and won some money, and now that sucked you back in and got you addicted, which is what Vegas does.
It's pick and choose.
You're chasing it. You're chasing.
I'm a weekend better. I'm not a weekday better, just a weekend better.
Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears a little bit. Marcus Freeman talked about CJ Carr, and of course the freshman quarterback injured his elbow a few weeks back, and there's been some speculation floating around about the severity of the injury, whether it might require surgery, all that kind of stuff. Here's what Freeman said.
No, it doesn't have to get surgery. It's still returning to being able to throw. We'll probably see a progression for him to start throwing here soon. We've been overly cautious on his return to play. We don't need to rush it. Let's make sure he is 110% healed, right? If He was the starting quarterback this year. You probably would have pushed him a little bit more aggressively, but we want to be smart with making sure he is 110% healed, really rehabbing his elbow to a point where he's better than probably what he was previously.
So I don't know. Anything jump out at you there?
Yeah, what jumped out to me is I don't think they disclosed the severity of the issue early on, which they have every right to do, right? Like they don't need to cause.
I mean, he didn't even
and,
have to bring it up to begin with when he did. I don't know if you were watching that press conference or not, but like CJ Carr is the fourth string quarterback and he was injured in practice. So they could have kept it, completely secret if they wanted to, or, tried to keep it secret anyway.
Yeah, so I feel like kind of my kind of take on hearing Marcus Freeman talk there is at the beginning, I don't think they necessarily understood the severity of the injury, and I don't think they wanted to publicly say that a quarterback has an elbow injury, right? Because like that's the worst type of injury. I feel like when you talk about anyone who's throwing any sort of object, and it sounds like a lot of it was kind of naturally healed or more progress was made than anticipated by just kind of resting and going through therapy and that sort of situation. But it to me kind of sounds like they dodged a bullet and at the beginning didn't really fully understand how extensive the injury was going to be. And it's going better than plans kind of now down the road. But, I would ultimately expect CJ Carr to probably be shut down for the rest of the season based off of kind of the comments he made. I don't see him. Maybe in bowl preparation, he might come back and do some light throwing. But I would say like full, regiment workouts of throwing. I don't think he's going to do until the end of bowl season, really.
I mean, I like the fact that, like you see, this is the fourth string quarterback, and they've, he's been the scout team quarterback. Obviously, he and Kenny Minchie were kind of trading off for probably the first half of the season, maybe not quite half the season until the injury occurred in practice. Tyler Buckner was the scout team guy a couple of weeks ago against Navy. And I mean, I agree with what Freeman is saying. This is a backup quarterback, and they're just taking it a little bit more, on the cautious side. Why do you need to rush him back? He's not the starting quarterback. But, again, like you heard him say, if this was the starting quarterback, it sounds like this is probably something he could have come back and played through, so it's not severe. They're just taking it on the cautious side. And I like that because this is basically the quarterback of the future if you're Notre Dame. So why rush him back when there's nothing to rush him back for at this point? Now your screen is strobing over there. What's that all about?
I don't know. I'm texting everyone in the house to please leave the Wi-Fi.
Everyone in the house? Like, are the cats and dogs on the Wi-Fi right now as well?
Probably the downstairs neighbor, but I'm just gonna refresh my feed real quick so we're
okay.
Not distracted by this.
It has just always been something since Jesse switched jobs. One, he had to kind of leave the show for a few weeks as he began the new job. And now, I was just saying, Jess, you had to leave the show for a while when you started the new job. Then you get back, you had to turn in the computer that you used to use for the show because you were using a work computer to do the show. And ever since then, it's just been one technological failure after another there in Cleveland since you've come back.
You notice I am now zoomed out.
Okay.
It fixed itself. I don't know what happened, but
you are obsessed with your face being too blown up on the screen.
Now you can see the zipper. You can see the logo on my sweater. Those go back. I guarantee you wouldn't see those things at the beginning of the show. Thank you.
DK, you look small now. Oh, I'm glad we could work through this. I'm glad we could work through it.
No one was harmed either.
No, it's very true. No dogs harmed in the process of making this show here tonight. So that's a good thing. So another player, one of the other players, Marcus Freeman talked about freshman safety Tay Johnson. And he's been out since training camp, broke a bone in his left foot, but he's back. He's practicing. And he's on the depth chart at number 2 at cornerback after coming in as a safety. He's number 2 behind Leonard Moore on this week's depth chart.
I think it's a credit to his skill set. He can play multiple positions. Shoot, Tay Johnson play receiver if we needed to. He's a great athlete. And we're just looking at the depth of our corners, obviously, with some injuries, just what we needed for this defense right now at this time. That's the role we need him to be in.
And I mean, look, Jess, like you get this guy back, and he is, as he said, a really good athlete. And he's 6'2". He's got some length to him. And it just like a few weeks ago when all these injuries started happening and Jaden Mickey left the team and all this different, like people were like, oh, do you have any wide receivers you can make cornerbacks, that kind of thing. And so it's like, it kind of happens at an opportune time that you get Tate Johnson back. He started practicing during the bye week last week, and they're at least confident enough that he's number 2. What do you think of this move?
Yeah, I love it. And I was actually, after the Benjamin Morrison injury, I was concerned about what they're going to do at the cornerback position in terms of depth. And when you have, the safety position is loaded with talent right now. You have, Adon Schuler, who's an underclassman. You have Talich, who's an underclassman. You have Urlacher, who's a true freshman. So I just feel like there is a better fit for Tay Johnson right now, and that happens to be just providing depth at the cornerback position. And not only depth, but when you're second string, you're going to find your way on the field, especially when when they take a 3 deep on the road. He's going to be forced into some special teams roles because you don't bring people on the travel roster and essentially not play them, right? Like there's going to be a role for him probably on special teams on the travel roster. And, a really good thing about this too is I don't think they necessarily have to burn his red shirt either because of when he came back in proximity of the season, right?
He got 4 games left right now in the regular season, so he could play all 4 and not have to worry about the red shirt.
So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for development, seeing what you have. And to me, the number one thing that comes from this and the thing that I'm most impressed with is the continuation of Marcus Freeman and in his success in recruiting. I feel like, a few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago under a different regime, if your 2 corners got hurt, that 3rd or 4th string corner was going to be a liability on the field, right? Now it just feels like it's the next man up and they're going to perform and you're not going to skip a beat. And I think that is the biggest thing that I've noticed in the Marcus Freeman era. And I know we're still building up to wins and playoffs and advancement in the playoffs, but I'm seeing an on-field difference between these players, not only at the starting position, but 1 through 3, where I feel comfortable about the depth. And if they need to step in, again, they're not just going to be the corner out there getting torched play after play.
Yeah, and again, like when you look at Johnson and Leonard Moore, they're almost, just in terms of the dimensions, they're almost exactly the same size. They're both 6'2". Leonard Moore, I think, is a little over 190 pounds. Johnson back in training camp was listed at 188, and I'm sure he's been working out and all that kind of stuff. So who knows, maybe he's even a little bit thicker right now. But just testament to recruiting, the fact that they have the confidence in him to have him at number 2 on the depth chart behind Leonard Moore, and of course to Mike Mickens as well for the development and everything that'll come into play. Irish for life. Very sorry for your loss. It sounds like you lost a pet there in the house. Very, very sorry for that, and we'll be thinking about you as you go forward. Final thought before we get into rapid fire here tonight. Billy Schrouth, of course, came back for the Navy game after missing 4 games with an ankle injury. He, of course, bumped Sam Pendleton out of the lineup when he took over at left guard, jumping in there next to Anthony Knapp, of course, at left tackle. So are they going to stick with that this week?
It'll be the same for Florida State as it was for Navy. That's what our depth chart says right now. every week, the roles can change at any position, including offensive line. Now, I'm not saying every week we're going to change offensive line or we're going to change who's starting, but that's the mindset that we all have to have. Every week, your role can change based on how you prepare, but based on what this team needs you to do to have success on Saturday. And that's what's important for everybody in our program to understand, is that we're not changing who's starting just to change. If we believe this is what it takes to have success against this opponent, then we have to be willing as a coaching staff to change who's starting and who's playing and all those different things. But no, we're not changing our offensive line.
Oh, not changing the offensive line for this game. If they feel like they need to make changes, they'll make it. And I liked what he said. We're not changing just to make a change. And, that addresses a lot of different things. I think, when you talk about the entire composition of the offensive line, but feels like a pretty good move to stick with Shrouth in there. You got Shrouth and Spindler as the tackles. Anthony Knapp had a better game against Navy a couple of weeks ago. Mil Wagner remains consistent over there on the right side, and Pat Coogan in the middle. Feels like a pretty good decision to stick with what they had last time out.
Yeah, and I really liked the way Notre Dame controlled the line of scrimmage against Navy. I felt like they did a good job of getting that initial push, and I felt like, they were bullying them essentially all game. And that's the name of Notre Dame's game, is they're going to smack you in the mouth and run, and I think hold up long enough and pass for Riley Leonard to either get rid of the thing or tuck it down and try to get some extra yards. So I think this plays into what they do best. And I also think at the end of the day, Billy Strouth was, a starter at the beginning of the season for a reason. Unfortunately, he had a minor setback due to injury, but now that he's healthy again, there was a reason why he was the starter at the beginning of the season. So I like, him kind of re-stepping into that role. But I also liked what Marcus Freeman said too. At the end of the day, it's really the team over me, right? If the team needs you to sacrifice for this game and do what's best for the team, and that's ultimately what they're going to do, is they're going to put the best players on the field that they believe gives them the best shot to win. And if that fails, well, then you can criticize Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff. But I believe, their assessment of talent, considering they're there every day, and their preparation in terms of game plan of knowing what's going to be best for the opponent on hands.
Yeah, I think that it helped Anthony Knapp having how much better did the entire left side of the offensive line look against Navy by having Shrouth. One Shrouth had, not by a lot, but at least coming into the season, he had more experience than most of the other guys, with the exception of Rocco Spindler. But, pretty much all of the rest of the guys, he had more experience than, and he was arguably, maybe not even arguably, their best offensive lineman. So you get him back. Spindler's playing well, and now you've got both of them, like I think a lot of us thought we might see when this season started, but now you've got the two of them at guard. And I think that this offensive line really has a chance to take off here down these last 4 games of the season and ramping up toward the playoff when it's all said and done. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do this thing.
We're going to swing it right back to the college football playoff, because the rankings do come out tonight. Where will Notre Dame be ranked when the first college football playoff rankings come out?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you my 1 through 10. I think that's
I knew it. Okay. All right. I had a feeling that you were going to not just give me Notre Dame, but you were going to give me the whole thing. So, okay.
Well, you need context.
Now, you're not projecting what you think they're going to be at the end of the season. This is what you think it's going to look like when the rankings come out tonight, right?
That is correct. I think.
Okay.
Or you know what? I'm going to start backwards at 10, because I think that's going to be closer to.
Well, there are 12 teams. There are 12 teams, so you should probably start at number 12.
Probably start at number 12. I'm going to go with Boise State at number 12.
Okay.
I'm going to go with.
Now hold it. Do you think that Boise State actually shows up that high just because they are the highest ranked group of 5?
Yes, I think that the committee would do it if the season ended today. This is what the 12-team playoff would look like. That's the format that I am assuming.
So even though Boise State, like in one poll they're 12 this week, and the other poll they're 14. So you're going to go Boise State at number 12. Okay.
Boise State at number 12, Texas A&M at number 11, BYU at number 10, Notre Dame at 9, IU at 8, Penn State at 7, Tennessee at 6, Texas at 5, Ohio State at 4, Georgia at 3, Miami at 2, and Oregon at 1 is my final 12 prediction right there.
So where did you have Miami?
2.
Oh, so you got Miami at 2 and then Oregon at number 1. So you think Miami's going to be that high simply?
I mean, they're undefeated in a power conference. They have to be ahead of teams that have one loss. If IU is ahead of Notre Dame, then Miami has to be ahead of one loss Ohio State as well. Is my rationale.
I don't completely disagree with that. I think Notre Dame is going to be the most interesting case study, I think, when this first ranking comes out, because number 1, the win against Texas A&M lost some luster because they got knocked off, of course, by South Carolina, and they still, of any of these teams who are in the running, have the worst loss because of Northern Illinois. And I think that is going to make them, like, where exactly the committee puts them is going to be the most interesting question because of that. Because, I mean, obviously you have other one-loss teams in there, but Ohio State's loss is to Oregon. Georgia's loss is to Alabama, which, even though, not as great, because Alabama's lost a couple of times, but go on down the line. Did I already say Ohio State? Yeah. Tennessee's loss is to Arkansas. So not quite as bad as Notre Dame's, but not a great loss nonetheless. Penn State's loss is to Ohio State, so I think ultimately Notre Dame is going to end up at number 10. I think the committee is going to put both Indiana and BYU ahead of Notre Dame. I could be wrong, but they're both undefeated. And, like what you were just talking about with Miami, you're still talking about, Power 4 conferences, both of them undefeated. So by definition, neither one of them has a bad loss. Neither one of them have as good a win as Notre Dame has, but they also don't have a loss. And so I think that they're both going to end up ahead of Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame is going to be number 10 when it comes out tonight. Corey's saying 8th. DK is saying 9th.
I'm writing mine down right now so I can compare and contrast.
Who is Monty? I have no idea who you're talking about, Stymie. I'm convinced Notre Dame doesn't get it. I mean, come on. You have to look at this rationally, right? Like one, I don't know who Monty is, whoever Stymie was talking about. And 2, I think because of that NIU loss, they're going to be a little bit lower, like you can justify it right now. And maybe this is how it plays out. Ryan is saying quality of wins over quality of losses. If that's how you want to see
can't
it,
lose when
that's
you're
how
not
you'll
playing
say
anyone.
it. But yeah, well, you can't lose if you're not playing anyone. I mean, so how does that justify Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois?
I don't say it justifies it. I'm just saying that, like, there's nothing on IU's resume that's more impressive than what Notre Dame has done. I just don't know if Notre Dame's wins can outweigh their loss. Essentially, that's going to be the tipping point in the scale. And that's, to me, what I want to – I don't care – I mean, I don't care where Notre Dame falls in this ranking, but I do care where they fall so I can get an understanding of what's being considered more, the quality of the wins or the severity of that one loss.
Yeah. I do think they could be as high as 8th. 8 is their ceiling to me. 8, 9, 10. That's a cop-out. I'm going with 10 just because I don't know how the committee is going to view the Northern Illinois loss. And again, the Texas A&M win is still good, but it's not as good as it was a week ago because of them losing to South Carolina. And those are the two things that the committee is going to have to weigh. And the fact that you do have all these unbeaten teams up at the top of their power conferences right now.
Speaking of South Carolina, did you see the what Beamer did in the locker room after the game? I thought that was pretty fun.
I didn't see that.
It was his wife's birthday was coming up, and he basically picked like this old school kind of like R&B throwback song that the players are always singing at practice, and he got all of them to start singing it in the middle of the locker room, and she was like standing inside them in the circle. It was pretty cool, especially after a win against Texas A&M.
Yeah. I'll have to see if I can find that. I hadn't seen that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Marcus Freeman says Jordan Botelho plans to return to Notre Dame next year.
Oh, it's a great sign to me, considering a guy that who I feel like we've been waiting for them to kind of take off, right? To have that kind of signature year to stand out and potentially have, some draft to end up on some people's draft radars, best case scenario. A guy who I would say has, not largely, he's just kind of, he's underachieved and not really he hasn't reached his full potential. And I thought he was kind of tapping into that full potential this season, came back in really good shape, showed an understanding of the defense, was playing with a high motor, just doing all the things that you want to. And it was really unfortunate as soon as things started to click for him that he got injured. So, I think it's a great sign for Botelho. To me, it shows that he's mentally there, right? Like after an injury like that and kind of being, a guy who's been in the college system for 5 or 6 seasons now, you can get mentally drained and worn down by that. So I think it's a great sign that he's coming back.
And I think it's great for him because I do think that there is, still a lot of professional potential for a guy like Jordan Botelho. And it's obviously great for the team in terms of depth. And maybe this turns into, you don't need to go to the transfer portal to find another defensive end next year when you look at everything they're going to be, having coming back. Now, this is obviously assuming that Botelho and Traore both recover, on schedule from their knee injuries. But you've got those two guys. Now you've already got Josh Burnham. You've still got Junior Tuihalamaka. You've got Logan Thomas, who's made some contributions already as a freshman, who you expect to just continue to get bigger and stronger and better next year. And of course, you got Bryce Young on the other side as well. I think I already said Josh Burnham in there. So like that's 6 guys right there. So could you potentially, with a bigger guy like Botelho, maybe even see him just go to the other side because you've got, all these other quick twitch guys who can help you out at Viper as well. So I think it's just great for the shape of the room, for those, defensive end spots, and for Botelho, who, as you said, he was coming into his own this year, and it stunk to see him have to see his season end with what he was doing, and Traore in that mix as well. But Traore obviously with about a lot of eligibility remaining, so good shape for that room coming up next year. So, Jesse, would you rather have a coach like Marcus Freeman, who's shown he can win big games, but it also has shown that he is prone to some upset losses, as we were just talking about, Northern Illinois under his belt, or a guy like James Franklin, who has 11 more years of experience, but can't win the games that matter?
Well, couldn't we just substitute James Franklin and Brian Kelly for each other in this question?
I think it's been pretty well established that people would take Marcus Freeman over Brian Kelly at this point, right?
Oh yeah, and I guess what I'm getting at is I would 100% take Marcus Freeman over James Franklin over Brian Kelly, because I can live with not as much as not as much as I could 2-3 years ago. I can live with these bumps and bruises that he's taking along the way, the Stanford, the Marshalls, the NIUs to an extent, right? Like they have to stop, don't get me wrong. But since he's so early in his head coaching career, I would much rather take a 10-2 season, 11-1 season where I'm beating Texas A&M, I'm beating, Louisville, I'm beating USC, assuming USC was going to be good this season, and drop, a random dud against Northern Illinois, then beat everyone I'm supposed to and not beat the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Michigan States of the world, the games that you really should be judged by, really who your fans judge you by the most. And ultimately, if you want to get anywhere on a national level, games you have to win. And Penn State is just constantly stuck in this, rotation or circle of life where it's just the same thing every year. It's 10-2, 11-1 Penn State. They beat everyone they're supposed to. They lose to the teams that they're supposed to. They compete in a bowl game because, their whole roster is playing essentially because of, James Franklin. I think he gets his guys to ultimately kind of buy in. And they win these kind of close or lose close New Year's Six games. And we repeat the cycle every year. But in that cycle, there's never a chance at a national championship. And to me, that's got to be the detriment deciding factor.
Yeah, because you can go to this whole, well, if over the last however many years, Franklin and Penn State, they would have been in the playoff. Look, he's 1-7 at home against top 10 teams. He's 6-10 against ranked teams at home. He's 1-9 against teams in the top 5, most of them being Ohio State. And of course, he's won just once in 11 tries against Penn State. John went against the grain with this one. He says he'd take Franklin because of the fact that he wins games that he's supposed to win. But there is something to that, and like, I think, Josh just put it up there. And Ryan just said, Josh said, who would you rather have, Brian Kelly or Franklin? Like, we've already seen Brian Kelly. It's probably the better question at this point. We've already seen Brian Kelly. The common denominator between the two that really turned me off the most about both of them is they're both completely willing to throw anyone and everyone under the bus, like when it serves it. Franklin is always just whining out loud. He was talking the other day about, we don't have enough. We got to go dig, we got to dig deeper into the pot. We got to have more NIL so we can compete with Ohio State and all this stuff. It's like, are you telling me that Penn State doesn't have enough resources? First, he's complaining about the airport so they can fly out to USC. It was a close game. They still beat USC. It's just too much. I think I think that Franklin is kind of in a place similar to where Kelly was when he was at Notre Dame, in terms of,
he's at his ceiling.
Yeah. Has he reached his ceiling? I think that he probably has. And Marcus Freeman is nowhere close to his ceiling because, the talent is showing up in droves right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball with all these young guys who have had the opportunity to play. And as they continue to stack more talent, I think that Marcus Freeman's ceiling is still well down the road. James Franklin has already arrived there, and he's knocking his head on it right now.
Well, what is the one thing that we heard Penn State whine and cry about for the longest time in comparison to Ohio State and maybe Michigan? They can't get the quarterback, right? Like, the quarterback is what's been holding them back. They have these dominant defenses. They just need a quarterback. A quarterback would solve all their issues. Well, I got news for you. It's year 2 of Drew Aller. He's a 5-star recruit. Same result, James Franklin. So what is it? At the end of the day, what's the one thing that stayed consistent, but you kept changing everything else? The head coach position. And so I just feel like you alluded to not too long ago, James Franklin has unfortunately hit his ceiling. And not only that, but I feel like he's mentally kind of placed this block in front of himself as well, where he himself can't get over the Ohio State hurdle.
Well, I mean,
he himself can't get over the Michigan hurdle. So how can you expect your team to do that when you mentally or you can't get past this barrier yourself?
If they don't have the pick 6, and if Will Howard doesn't have that fumble going into the end zone, it's a much more lopsided game than what the final score actually dictated. Like that was a big momentum play with that pick six early on, but what did Penn State do after that? And then the goal line situation, they run the running back up the middle 3 times before throwing on 4th down, and then it's incomplete. I mean, that's all stuff that's on the head coach. And Ryan is saying Aller is good against the average teams, and that's right, just like Penn State is good against the average teams, because 90% of the Big Ten is average teams. I mean, it's what you're ripping Indiana for, because they haven't played anybody. They don't even have to play Penn State and Indiana don't play each other this year. Watching that game, the skill talent, like besides Aller, shouldn't Penn State have a lot more like high-end skill talent on that roster than what they have? They don't have it.
Can I ask you a question as well? Did you get to watch much of Penn State, Ohio State this weekend? Did you watch, how much would you say you watched of that game?
I mean, I watched a good deal of it. I'm trying to think of what happened in the afternoon.
So I made the claim that it was a sloppy game, and I got ripped to, of course, being in Ohio State country, I got ripped to shreds for saying that it was a sloppy game. But to me, 3 turnovers inside the 5-yard line is a sloppy game. I don't know about you, but a fumble, touchback, a couple turnovers on down. I mean, Penn State had 1st and goal from the 3 and couldn't get in, and ended up going for it and I think they threw an interception too at one point in the red zone. So you had a touchback, an interception, a turnover, and that's sloppy football to me. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's what happens when 2 powerhouse schools get together and play, like Penn State, Ohio State. You wouldn't know about that because that's a big matchup. And it's like, okay, but it still wasn't refined football. So I don't know. To me, for how much hype that was around the game, I felt like there was a lot of sloppiness.
Could have been a little better. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all I always like to get other people's opinions on things when I'm kind of coming out of left field. Again, another thing that happened over the weekend that got blown out of proportion that I wasn't necessarily as overly impressed with, Saquon Barkley hurdle. A backwards hurdle is a hurdle. It doesn't matter what direction you're facing. You're just hurdling. It's whether or not you can see the defender or not. Was it an extremely athletic play? Sure, but it's still a hurdle at the end of the day.
Did somebody try to tell you that wasn't a hurdle or what?
No, they're just trying to make it seem like it's this extreme juke move that no one's ever seen. Yes, extremely athletic. I cannot do it myself.
Oh, you're cutting against the grain is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, I'm cutting against the grain because, again, it was impressive, but a hurdle is a hurdle no matter what direction you're facing. It's not like he changed or reinvented the move. It's just he happened to be facing backwards instead of forward. So, again, I could go on about this for a while.
What about the game time itself? Because Penn State fans weren't happy about big noon kickoff and not being in prime time. Do they have a beef? Which would you prefer? You're hosting Ohio State. You want noon or you want prime time kickoff?
Me personally, I want prime time, but Ohio State, Penn State fans can't gripe because they're part of the Big Ten. And what does the Big Ten want? They want the Big Ten or big noon kickoff. They want, they want all of the publicity to be on them. And so, I get it while they're doing it at noon, but at the same time, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I don't like noon games. Like if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching a game that my team is not involved in, especially like that one. I loved having Penn State, Ohio State on at noon so I could actually sit there and watch it. And I don't have to, worry about staying up till midnight and trying to watch the whole thing. So I liked it, and look, remember when all these TV contracts came out a year ago, all these Big Ten teams were complaining because of the fact, like the NBC primetime deal. Oh, we've got to play night games in November. And it's like, okay, well, you don't have a night game. You get a noon game instead. So I love having a big game on at noon, just, kick back and
divides
watch it
the
for
day
3.5 hours in the afternoon. You still got a lot of stuff, that you can do later on in the day. Fill in the blank. Olivia Miles turning in a triple-double in her first game back after missing all of last season with injury is blank.
Just what the doctor ordered, baby. After coming off of the injury that left her sidelined all last season. First full game back. What more could you ask for than the doctor cooking up a triple-double in the first game back? And to me, getting a triple-double is the most electric thing that you can do in basketball. I think it's the definition of being the most well-rounded or the best player on the court, because not only do you know how to score, but you can assist your teammates in scoring. You can facilitate the scoring of the team. And then also, with the rebounds, you are gaining back possession. You are not allowing the other team to get second chance points or to continue possession. And so to me, again, the triple-double is the most valuable stat in the game because of how it affects the rest of the team. It's one of the most selfless stats in the entire game, in my opinion.
And to me, it's confirmation. Olivia Miles, still a superstar. I don't think there is any doubt about that. I thought she was going to have a triple. I thought she might have a triple-double by halftime. The way, I'm sitting there looking at the stats and, the way things were shaping up. She didn't quite get there by halftime, but she did by the end of the game. And quite honestly, she should have had a few more assists, or, her teammates missed a few bunnies, but, maybe that kind of happens when you're, depleted a little bit and everyone's a little bit more fatigued than normal. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. But, just fantastic. And to see the confidence that she has, because when these players come back, she obviously sat out all of last season, not wearing a knee brace, complete confidence in that knee. And I think that that's what she needed, just to have that time to make sure, that was there. And there's just so much chemistry already with the team and everybody around her. And, all of her teammates have talked about you got to be ready for Olivia Miles to pass at any time. And you saw some of the, and there were a couple. There was the first pass that she had, she was looking for Hannah Hidalgo over on the wing, and I think it got deflected out of bounds. I initially thought that maybe she sailed it a little bit, but I mean, some of those no-look passes and just some of the things that she did, just amazing. And she actually started the game with a 3-pointer as well. And I think that that's a part of her game, that's still kind of coming along. But I did see she is the first player, Division I men's or women's basketball, as well as either NBA or WNBA, to miss an entire season and then come back and have a 20-point triple-double in their first game back from injury. So that is pretty amazing. And she's got 4 career triple-doubles now, the most in Notre Dame history and the second most in ACC history as well. So talk about welcome back, Olivia Miles. It was great to see last night in that blowout win over Mercyhurst. So a lot of people, of course, as Decaf says, on pins and needles with all the injuries on the women's team. What gives? Well, again, sometimes injuries happen, but here is kind of the where they are. Sonia Citron sat last night. She's got the sore ankle, and they're very hopeful that she is going to be back very soon. I can't say how soon because there's just certain stuff that I'm not allowed to say, but very soon would be kind of how I would term it. So look forward to having her back. There was no reason either for the exhibition last week or Mercyhurst last night. When you look at the fact that they scored over almost 210 combined points in those games, there was no reason to push Sonia Citron out there with a sore ankle, but they expect to have her back very soon. So that'll be another cog in this machine. It's just, it's going to be running pretty well. What are you sighing at?
Well, I don't want to say this out loud, but I have a long-standing theory or conspiracy maybe that it always feels like for example, NFL, it feels like as soon as you get someone back healthy,
something happens to somebody else.
Something else happens, right? You're I remember, and maybe this is, I just have, scarred memories, but it felt like one of the seasons the Cowboys were constantly hurt, right? And every time we were like, oh, just can't wait to get this guy back. And then that guy gets back and then another starter gets hurt, right? It just feels like it's this revolving door of people coming in and out. I just hope and pray that they can be full strength, full health, and all be on the court at the same time, because that's when it's going to be that's when they're going to be at their best, obviously.
Yeah. DJ says back for USC. I would say probably even sooner than that, DJ. But again, I can't be any more specific than that. Now, as for Maddie Westbeld, they're talking about probably sometime in December. It is still a ways off, but they're hoping as she recovers from that foot injury to get her back around, ACC play starts early in December because they go to Syracuse. I wouldn't look for that to happen, but maybe later in December, I think is probably, and again, it's like there was a, foot surgery and all that kind of stuff involved with Maddie Westbeld. So they're not going to push her back any sooner than they have to, but it sounded like, that's kind of the case there. The good news for Liza Carlin, who was injured in the first half of the exhibition game last week. She was in a walking boot last night on the bench. She's going to be out a while, but it is more weeks as opposed to months, is what I was told with her. Weeks as opposed to months. So they do expect to get Liza Carlin back as well. No definitive timeline on that. So, I mean, it's good news. And then Emma Risch came back last night. She's a 3-point shooter, didn't shoot the lights out, but I mean, look, she looked rusty, like someone who missed almost all of her freshman season last year after having hip surgery. The thing for her is just keep shooting, and eventually they're going to start going down. It's going to be good. And then you get Citron back, so they'll get some 3-point shooting there, and both Hidalgo and Olivia Miles can shoot the three as well. So I think that perimeter game is going to kind of round into form. And, and it's also important to remember that both Maddie Westbeld and Liza Carlin can both shoot threes as well. And they don't have, obviously, either one of them right now. So it's all very good. All very good. I don't know. Anything else, Jesse, on the women's basketball before we roll on?
Just health. That's going to be their limiting factor this season. I think they're going to gain pieces as they go. And so that's going to be on Neil Ivey to kind of, work on those rotations, work on getting those minutes back in and getting those players kind of ramped up, to full time, and still keeping that chemistry on the court, because it's not time to just experiment. There's still games you have to win. There's still conference games, like everything matters. And so that's going to be the biggest hurdle, I think, for Neil Ivey this season, is as she starts to gain full health as the season goes on, how is she rotating those minutes, incorporating those minutes, and getting everyone kind of fed, essentially, right? And getting
that'll be a good problem to have when it actually happens.
Yeah, instead of trying to figure out how you're going to work with a 5 to 6 girl rotation, having 8 players is such a key difference.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Sarah Cernugal, the former walk-on, was playing in the first half last night, which is maybe the first time, maybe the second or third time, actually, now that I think about it, in the last couple of years, that has happened. That might have happened once or twice in the first half last year. It seemed like late in the first half that might have happened, but like they had 7 available players last night, so it's a little bit tough when you're forced into that. But a lot of good things to come, and hopefully they just all keep getting healthier, and it's going to look that much better. It's like DJ was talking about USC, and that is 18 days from now, the trip to Los Angeles. Purdue this weekend, James Madison here in South Bend, and then out to Lafayette in Easton, Pennsylvania, rather. Never been there before, but we're going there in a couple of weeks on the 17th. Okay, so Monday Night Football last night. Tampa Bay head coach Todd Bowles played for overtime, kicked the extra point rather than going for 2 and trying to win at the end of regulation in Kansas City. Do you buy or sell the move?
So I'm really glad you asked this question, because I have a fun backstory that goes along with it. So,
okay, all right.
Saturday evening, at some point on Saturday, we got up, we went to yoga in the morning, we went and got breakfast and kind of walked around some shops, and then we came back home and I watched Ohio State and Michigan as much as I could, Ohio State and Penn State. And then at like 5 o'clock Saturday evening, right at sunset, we had another round of engagement photos at this park that's nearby our house. But and then afterwards, Naomi was feeling good and she's like, let's just stay out and go to this wine bar. So we're sitting down.
Is this going somewhere,
Yes.
Counselor? Is this going to lead somewhere?
Can I get more than 30 seconds?
I'm going to bring in cross-examination here in a minute.
So we're at this wine bar and we're sipping on wine, and this place now put in a TV so all the guys can sit in there and watch football. So we're in there watching football, and I don't know if this was the wine talking because I know Naomi doesn't really care at the end of the day, but I was telling her, so we're watching some close football games. I go, you know what? If I were a head coach and I was in one of these games where I'm undermatched, I know I don't have the talent level as, Georgia, Ohio State of the worlds. I'm in a close dogfight at the end. I, as a head coach, if I tied it up, if I got that possession where I need to kick the extra point or go for two, as the underman coach, as the under-talented team, why not take fate into your own hands and say, you know what? I have more faith statistically that we can convert 1 2-yard play than playing an entire overtime with a team on the road is more talented to you than you. You're fortunate to be in this close of a game. And so, again, I don't know if the wine was talking. I don't know what was going on. But I literally had this full-on conversation with Naomi. I know she doesn't care. But I said, if I were the head coach, I'm going for 2 because statistically, I believe in my team that we can convert 1 play compared to playing an entire overtime period with a team that I know is far better than me. So to answer your question, I am taking the bull by the horns and I'm going for 2. And I am more confident in that 2-yard play than I am in playing an entire overtime. So I'm going for it. I'm putting fate in my team and throwing out a play. And this goes back to another theory I have. You should always have a Rolodex of 2 to 3 yard plays that you've never shown before.
Right.
And so if you are prepared for this situation, statistically, you are better off to go for 2 than try to play an entire overtime period with a team you don't match up with.
That's exactly right. At the end of the day, Tampa Bay is a 500 team, and the Kansas City Chiefs remain undefeated. Now, the Chiefs haven't necessarily dominated everybody. They've won a lot of close games.
Undefeated.
But they're undefeated because they are the defending champs, and you're playing them on the road. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying. You got to go for it in that situation because, at the very least, no one on your team, I don't think anyone on your team, you're at the end of, if you don't get it, I don't think your guys are going to be mad at you for saying, I've got faith in you. Let's go win the damn game.
That's what I mean.
I don't think anyone's going to be mad at you in that situation. Anyone on your roster, if anything, it helps you in the locker room. I think you should probably log out and come back in again, Chest. Your technology remains undefeated tonight. So.
I'm having a great day. I just plugged in my charger. Maybe that's what was steering all of this.
You just plugged in your charger. You mean
Correct.
You plugged in your computer to the charger?
Yeah, I plugged the charger into the computer.
Well, it did stop blinking. Maybe that's it. Was your battery about to run out?
Says it was on 50%, but it was definitely huffing. So I hope that the continuous power supply fixed all of our issues.
I think you're huffing. You're huffing something over there in Cleveland. I don't know what is going on tonight. Go for it. Interesting, though, that you remember the whole you're down by 14 points. Do you go for 2? That
I've not bought in on that one.
Into?
I'm not bought in on that one.
Our team decided to go for 2 the other day, and they actually got the 2. But, of course, it didn't matter. And it probably didn't matter to anybody except the people out in Vegas because it ended up being a 6-point game instead of a 7-point game. So, but they went for 2, and they got it when they were down by 14. Speaking of which, today is the NFL trade deadline. I saved this one for the very end. Cowboys traded a 4th-round pick for Carolina receiver Jonathan Mingo. Ate your baby. At the same time, they placed Dak Prescott on IR, the hamstring injury. Do you buy or sell the Cowboys being buyers instead of sellers on today's trade deadline?
You know what? I am surprised you're wasting my time. You're wasting everyone else's time by putting this question in here. Because here's what I'm going to tell you: I sell everything. I am
sell it all.
I'm
selling this season now.
I am sold on this season. I am sold on Jerry Jones. I hope Dak Prescott just goes to IR for the rest of the season. He's got nothing to do. What are you going to do? Get out there and get more hurt? Obviously, Jerry Jones doesn't care about putting a roster out there that utilizes your skills or gives you the best chance after making you the most paid quarterback in the league. There's so many more holes on this roster than Jonathan Mingo at wide receiver. And not only that, but Deontay Johnson, the better wide receiver, went for less last week. And you made a public appearance saying, well, where do these players come from? You think they just show up out of nowhere? You let Deontay Johnson go for a 5th and 6th swap, yet you're out here trading another 4th-round pick like you did for Trey Lance last year for Mingo, a guy who can't even catch the ball half the time. It's so stupid.
But they liked him. They liked him when they were evaluating him in the draft, Jesse. They liked him.
But now Jerry Jones.
This is Jerry Jones putting more stock in his own evaluation than anything else.
Well, now he gets to stand up on the pedestal, go on all these radio shows and say, oh,
we tried.
I did something. I'm all in. I went out and got a wide receiver.
I got
the day after Dak goes to IR. What literal sense does that make? Why don't you find a defensive tackle who can stop someone from gouging you in the run game the entire time? How about that, Jerry Jones?
That's what happens when you draft another Michigan man in the 1st round on the defensive line last year.
You know what? Jerry Jones is just senile, and there's a saying, kill a bird, kill a bird with a stone or whatever. I wish they could kill 3 birds with 1 stone: the president, the owner, and the GM.
I tell you what, a couple weeks ago, I was upset that it's like, I've got all these basketball conflicts. I'm not going to be able to watch the Cowboys on Sundays in November.
Cares?
I'm not very upset about it right now. This just gives me an excuse not to have to watch the garbage. Look, Jerry Jones builds his team by using the draft predominantly. He leans heavily on the draft because, again, he puts more stock in what he considers to be his own draft evaluations, his people as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he thinks that, it's his evaluations that are making or breaking this whole thing. He builds his team predominantly by using the draft and by re-signing his best players. That's why they never go out and invest that heavily in free agency. But if that is your plan, you cannot give up 4th-round picks for backup wide receivers, regardless of what you thought about this guy a couple of years ago when he was coming out of college in the draft. They got a 5th-round pick back in exchange for Amari Cooper a few years ago. So they're giving up more to get this guy than what they got for Amari Cooper, who was far better at the time. The Chiefs used a 5th-round pick to get DeAndre Hopkins.
Scored 2 touchdowns last week.
The Cowboys, again, because of where the roster is, they are relying on 4th-round picks to turn these guys into starters. They traded a 4th-round pick to get Trey Lance, who's a 3rd-string quarterback. They used a 4th-round pick to get Maris Leafau, who's a big contributor on defense. This is just more. It's just more bad roster building. Yeah, more bad roster building by Jerry Jones is what it is.
I'm going to put it like this. I know this is the last question of the show. My current state of Cowboys fandom can be summed up. I willingly decided to go watch the Browns and Chargers with Naomi at the Browns game in stadium this weekend.
And you still watch the Cowboys.
Rather than watch the Cowboys and Falcons. I watched some moments here and there. I was watching the score on the
here
ESPN
and there.
app.
Every time something happened, I got a text from you right away.
I was tracking it.
Okay.
Pulled up some few plays here and there when I thought there was a chance. And then, again, I would rather watch the Browns not score any points offensively than watch the Cowboys. And I think that's a sad state of affairs.
Whew, man. That's just brutal. I was starting to wonder if you were even watching the Browns game because, again, like every time something happened during the Cowboys, and again, just going back, like you're giving up a 4th round pick to get a receiver. You're going to have Cooper Rush probably starting for at least the next 3 games, if not the next month.
It's probably 4.
The season is over now.
And you're wasting a pick on Jonathan Mingo. You need
to be trading away so you can get more draft picks. They never end up with a surplus of picks. It is what it is. TD4ND says time to jump on the Bears wagon. I tell you what, I was trying to convince my daughter this weekend that we all just need to jump on the Lions bandwagon, DK. So, and it's too late for that now because they're already doing good. And I wish that I had done that about a year and a half ago. I should have bought all the stock in the Lions and just went for it.
I would root for the Lions if it weren't people like Sean Koski and DK. I want to root for the Lions so bad.
I know.
But there are people like DK and my good friend Sean Koski who are I cannot be a fan of anything Detroit.
Matt's chipping in $5. Thanks for that super chat, Matt, for the new laptop fund. Shannon wants to know the dude on my shirt. This is the boss, Bruce Springsteen.
Is it a concert shirt?
It is. It's from. I got it at last year's tour when they were at Wrigley Field, but it is the Born in the USA tour shirt from.
You know what, DK? I've now that I've given up on the Cowboys, hockey season just started, right? Let's get into some hockey.
And this just made it. As Josh says, Bears ain't looking much better. That just capped off the day. As first I had to watch the Cowboys look like garbage. and then my daughter has to watch the Bears game. And then I went in the other room and I was trying to watch a little bit of the Lions-Packers game. And honestly, that game was not that much better. I don't know if it was just because it was raining and it was kind of sloppy out there, but not a much better quality of game to watch. But the Lions got those white uniforms dirty, like Dan Campbell wanted him to. I tell you what, man, Dan Campbell a couple of years ago when they did that Hard Knocks, I was really on the fence. It's like, man, like there's some things that I buy into, but there's some other things. It's just like, this guy, is he just like a hammerhead, like football guy? You know what I mean? Like is that what he is? Is he just this dense kind of, hammer-headed football guy, but like the guy is ahead of the curve. Like he goes for it and converts more times on 4th down than anybody. They scored 2 touchdowns against the Packers the other day, both of them on 4th down plays. Like he's hard to argue against right now. You finally got your computer figured out?
I did.
All right.
Sorry to upset everyone.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Good therapy tonight at the end of the show. We worked it out.
Watch the rankings, 30 minutes away.
They're coming up. College football playoff rankings. And again, if you're listening on a Wednesday, well, you already know what the result of that is. But live show, good stuff, lively chat tonight. Vincenzo will be back tomorrow. Jesse will be back on Thursday as we roll on through this week, leading up to Florida State on Saturday, the last third of the season. Jason, thank you very much. Joe,
hit that like button.
You very much. Hit that like button before you leave. We appreciate you once again. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.